Last summer, I lost my dad. It hit me hard. After the funeral, I felt lost. I needed a break from everything. So, I rented a small cabin in the woods by a quiet lake. I thought it would help me think. The first few days were okay. I went for long walks and listened to the birds. The pine trees felt calming. But on my second night, I couldn't sleep. It was too quiet. I heard a creaking noise below. I wasn't too sure if it was the cabin settling or something else. So, I got up to check. That was when I found a journal stuck between the floorboards. It looked old and worn out. I opened it and started reading. The entries were about someone else who had stayed in the cabin. They came here to escape their own loss. They wrote about meeting a stranger who came to help them through their pain. The further I read, the more intense it became. The strangers seemed to know things only they could have known. I felt a chill run down my spine. The next day, I was at the dock, staring at the water. I was deep in thought when I heard rustling behind me. I turned around, but there was nothing. Just trees and silence. I tried to brush it off, but my heart raced. A moment later, I found an old watch by the water. It looked just like my dad's. My stomach sank. That night, the wind picked up. This time it sounded different. I thought I heard whispers, like someone was calling my name. I couldn't tell if I was dreaming or if something was really out there. My grief felt heavy, and the lines began to blur. What was real? Just as I started to fall asleep, I heard a voice. "Lily," it said softly. I shot up in bed, my heart pounding. The air felt thick. I told myself it was my mind playing tricks. But somewhere deep inside, I knew something else was happening. That I thought about the journal's stories. Was this stranger real? Or just a reflection of my grief? I couldn't tell anymore. Just as doubt filled my mind, I heard the voice again, more urgent this time. "Why are you still here?" I looked around. Nobody was there. My heart raced. All I could hear was the wind, but it felt like the air was charged with something. It was getting harder to breathe. I strained to listen, hoping to catch a sign of what was out there. But the only thing I could hear was the rustling leaves. That I returned to my bed, feeling uneasy. I wanted to close my eyes and forget, but the whispering lingered. It was as if I wasn't alone. I didn't know if I wanted to hear the voice again. I didn't know if I was ready. All I knew was that I was far from finding the peace I sought. The next morning, I woke up feeling foggy. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to shake off the remnants of the voice from last night. I pulled myself out of bed and went to the kitchen, hoping a cup of coffee would help clear my mind. As I brewed the coffee, I glanced out the window. The lake shimmered in the morning light, deceptively calm. I remembered the watch I had found the day before. I had meant to examine it more closely, but fear held me back. I decided to take a look now. After grabbing the watch from my bag, I sat down at the little table. It was just a watch, but it felt heavier in my hands. I turned it over, and on the back was an inscription. "For my dearest Lily." My heart sank. Lily was my name. Could it really be a coincidence, or was this some bizarre connection? While I sat there, the journal lay open on the table. I glanced at it, feeling the weight of its secrets. The entries felt more than just words. They were cries for help. I flipped through the pages, looking for anything that might explain the whispers. But all I could find were the ramblings of someone lost like I was. Suddenly, I decided to go for a walk. The fresh air could clear my mind. I grabbed a jacket and stepped outside. The woods felt different today, more alive. I could hear the crunch of leaves beneath my feet and the call of distant birds. At the edge of the lake, I noticed something unusual sticking up from the water. It looked like a small wooden box. Curiosity piqued. I walked closer, the water lapping at my ankles. As I reached down to pull it out, a chill ran through me. My heart raced. I opened the box and found it filled with old photographs. My breath caught in my throat. The images were eerie. They showed a young girl at the lake, laughing and being held by a man who looked just like my dad. They were smiling, their faces bright in the sun. There was a dark shadow behind them in one photo, but I couldn't make out who it was. My pulse quickened. I staggered back, splashing water. This was too much. What was happening? My thoughts scrambled. Was my father here somehow? Was the stranger from the journal involved? I stumbled onto the dock, and just then, I heard the voice again. This time, it was more insistent. "You need to listen. Find me." My heart felt like it might explode. I was alone, but I wasn't. I looked back at the box, my mind racing. I needed answers, but I could also feel fear creeping in. Suddenly, the wind picked up, swirling around me with force. Just as I turned to run back to the cabin, something pulled me back. I couldn't tell if it was the wind or a hand on my shoulder. I froze. Then everything went dark. I woke in a cold sweat, gasping for air. My heart raced as I blinked against the darkness. It took me a moment to realize I was still on the dock, the water now lapping gently at my feet. Panic surged through me, but slowly, the world crept back into focus. Shakily, I pulled myself to a sitting position. The box of photographs was beside me, untouched. But the voice, that insistent voice, it was gone. Had I imagined it all? The whispers? The hand on my shoulder? I glanced around, half expecting to see someone lurking behind a tree. But only the rustle of leaves met my ears that I stood up, brushing the wetness from my jeans. I needed to get back to the cabin, to that journal. These photographs were unsettling and felt wrong in my gut. If the girl in the pictures was me, who was that man? And what did the journal have to say about all of this? As I walked back, I replayed the voice in my head. You need to listen. Find me. There was urgency in it. I didn't know who or what I was meant to find, but I needed to try. The journal could hold the answers. Back in the cabin, I grabbed the journal. I flipped through the pages frantically, searching for any clue. The entries seemed more chaotic now, the words jumping out at me. Then, I spotted something new, an entry I hadn't noticed before, written in a different, more frantic handwriting. I was too late. If you're reading this, it's still out there. Lily, you must find the truth before the summer ends. My heart raced as I read on. It chose her because of the ties. You must break free from the past. What past? Who chose who? The urgency pressed down on me like a weight. I leaped to my feet, the prospect of searching the surrounding woods filling me with a mix of dread and resolve. Just as I stepped outside, a chill swept through the air. The sun had dipped behind the clouds, casting long shadows. I felt a presence, as if the trees were watching me. Find me, echoed through my mind again, but now it felt even stronger. The woods were no longer just trees and shadows. They felt alive, breathing, filled with secrets urging me to dig deeper. I walked swiftly, keeping my eyes peeled for anything unusual. As I ventured further, I stumbled upon a clearing, a spot strangely familiar, just like in the photographs. In the center of the clearing was a small, weathered swing set. I felt a pull towards it, like it was calling my name. I approached and brushed my fingers against the worn metal. A shiver ran down my spine. That's when I saw it. A heart carved into the wood of one of the swings. My heart sank. Lily and the mystery man, was one of them named Mark? Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, my breath hitching. Someone was coming, and I wasn't alone anymore. I spun around, heart pounding. The sound of footsteps was getting closer, crunching softly on the fallen leaves. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. I scanned the trees, searching for the source of the noise. Hello? I called, my voice barely above a whisper. It felt foolish, but I needed to know if I was truly alone. The footsteps stopped. Silence enveloped the clearing, thick and heavy. I took a tentative step forward, feeling brave against my rising fear. That's when I saw him. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man with dark hair and intense eyes. He looked familiar, though I couldn't place him. He wore a shabby jacket and his face was slightly weathered, as if he had spent too much time under the sun. Who are you? I demanded, my voice shaky but firm. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the swing set, then back at me. You shouldn't be here, he said, his tone low and urgent. It's dangerous. Dangerous? I repeated, disbelief flooding my voice. What do you mean? I'm just trying to figure out what is happening. His eyes flickered with something pity? Fear? It was hard to tell. You don't understand. This place, it's tied to things that happened long before you got here. You have to leave. The weight of his words pressed down on me, but I pushed back against the urge to flee. No, I need to know the truth. I held up the photographs as evidence. These are my memories, and that voice, I can't ignore this. He studied me for a moment, and I could sense the conflict within him. You're not ready, he finally said, shaking his head. You'll find what you're looking for, but it won't be what you want. Then what will it be? I demanded, anger bubbling up. What happened here? Why are you here? Before he could respond, a sharp crack rang out behind me. I spun around, the swing set swaying slightly as if stirred by an unseen force. The chill that had enveloped me earlier returned, tightening around my chest. Suddenly, I caught movement among the dense trees. Something was watching us, a shadow, only a flash, but it was there, creeping close to the edge of my vision. My heart raced again, fear replacing anger. "We have to go?" the man urged, taking a step toward me. "Now." "No. I need answers." I shot back, feeling defiant. But even as I said it, I began to doubt my bravery. The trees whispered now, their rustling growing louder, as if they agreed with him. He took another step closer, urgency in every line of his face. "Lily, please. We can talk somewhere safer. You'll regret it if you don't listen to me." Before I could respond, the crack rang out once more, resonating through the clearing. This time it was followed by a low growl, deep, throaty, and unmistakably menacing. My pulse quickened as panic surged through me. "What is that?" I gasped, my eyes darting back to the trees. "I told you it was dangerous," he shouted, and as he moved closer, I felt an involuntary shiver run through me. The instinct to flee battled with my need for answers. The growl echoed again, and I knew I had a choice to make. Trust this stranger, or face whatever was lurking in the darkness. The air felt electric, thick with tension, and I knew one way or another, everything was about to change. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. The growl came again, lower this time, reverberating through the trees. I took a step back, instincts finally kicking in. Okay, I'll go," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Follow me," he said, urgency clear in his voice as he turned and sprinted deeper into the woods. I hesitated, glancing back at the swing set now shrouded in shadows. Whatever was out there felt too close for comfort that I quickly followed him, my heart racing and my breath coming in quick bursts. Branches snagged at my clothes as I maneuvered through the underbrush. I could hear him ahead of me, crashing through the leaves and twigs like a wild animal. He was already a few paces ahead, and I fought to keep up as panic pushed me forward. "Just stay close," he shouted over his shoulder, glancing back at me. His eyes held a flicker of fear I hadn't seen before. The ground beneath us sloped downward into a small ravine, and I stumbled, nearly losing my balance. I barely caught myself, but I didn't look back. Whatever was chasing us was close, and I could feel it in my bones. "Where are we going?" I gasped, scrambling over rocks and roots. I wanted to know where this lead would take us, but my words came out breathless and frantic. "The old cabin," he replied. "It's not far, but we need to hurry." My instincts screamed that this was a terrible idea. A cabin? In the middle of nowhere? But I pushed the thought aside and focused on his urgency. I had to trust him if I wanted to survive whatever was hunting us. As we reached the bottom of the ravine, I spotted the cabin nestled among the trees, its silhouette looming like a dark sentinel against the twilight sky. Splintered wood and overgrown vines cloaked it, making it look abandoned. "This is it," he said, his voice strained. "Get inside." We rushed to the door, and he shoved it open. It creaked loudly, echoing in the stillness. I stepped inside, my hands shaking. I didn't want to feel trapped, but it was better than being out there. The interior was dark, the only light coming from the gaps in the boarded-up windows. Dust motes hung in the air, and an overwhelming sense of unease washed over me. "Lock the door," he shouted, glancing back outside. His expression tense that I did as he instructed, wrenching the door shut and fumbling with the rusty bolt. "What is out there?" I asked, my voice quivering. He turned to me, his eyes now serious. "Something happened here a long time ago. It's connected to why you're here. You think you want answers, but some truths can break you." I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could respond, another growl erupted from outside, this time closer. The sound rattled through the cabin and made my skin crawl. I looked at him, my heart hammering in my chest. "What did you mean? What truth?" He stepped closer, urgency in his gaze. "You need to understand before it finds us. Not everything is what it seems." Then, as if in answer, the door rattled violently behind us. A shadow fell across the threshold, dark and shifting, and I felt my breath catch in my throat as it loomed closer. I glanced at him, fear and uncertainty screaming inside me. This was only the beginning. The door shuddered under the weight of whatever was outside. My heart raced as I pressed my back against the cold, rough wood, trying to steady my breathing. "What is it?" I whispered, barely able to form the words. He surveyed the area around the door, tense and on edge. "We need something to barricade it," he said. I glanced around the dimly lit cabin, taking in the rundown furniture and cobwebs. Just then, I noticed an old table against the far wall. It was broken, but it was sturdy enough to hold back whatever was out there. Over there, I pointed. Without waiting for him to respond, I rushed to the table, my hands shaking as I pushed it toward the door. He followed me, his eyes darting nervously to the door, expecting it to burst open at any moment. We shoved the table against the door, wedging it tightly. The growling came again, closer this time. It was low and menacing, echoing off the cabin's walls. My stomach knotted in fear. What is that thing? He inhaled deeply, leaning against the table as if it were the only thing keeping him grounded. I told you something happened here. They say it still roams these woods. It's not just a bear or a wolf, he faltered, the weight of unsaid words hanging between us. I grasped his arm, desperation clawing at me. What happened? Please, just tell me. He hesitated, obviously weighing the gravity of his words. Years ago, a group of kids went missing. They were last seen around here. It's like it took them, and it hasn't stopped since. A chill swept through me, and I shivered despite the warm air in the cabin. But why me? Why now? Because you saw the swing set. His voice was a low murmur, but it felt like a declaration. The swing set is part of it. It's connected to what happened. The spirits are restless. I shook my head, struggling to understand. This wasn't just about survival anymore. I was on the edge of something bigger and darker than I could comprehend. Spirits? The growling escalated into a furious snarl, and the door rattled violently again. I felt a rush of adrenaline as my instincts screamed at me to move. In that moment, I sensed something in the air, a new presence. I turned my head slightly to look to the back of the cabin, where a narrow staircase descended into darkness. What is down there? I asked, my voice trembling. Nothing good, he replied, eyes wide. People say the disappearances are tied to whatever is hidden down there. Then, the door bucked hard against the table, and I realized we wouldn't be able to hold it much longer. We have to go? I urged, panic rising in my throat. Did he? Yes, right. I had to know more about this curse, but suddenly, I didn't feel like I had a choice. The growling stopped, leaving a silence that was almost worse than the noise. That's when I saw it, a massive shadow creeping through the crack under the door, long and dark, almost serpentine. That I swallowed hard, dread flooding my veins. What do we do? Follow me, he shouted, fear and urgency entwined in his voice. He grabbed my hand, leading me toward the darkened staircase. I hesitated at first, a part of me screaming to stay, but I felt the heat of breath creeping up behind us. We had to move, so I escaped into the unknown. The stairs creaked beneath our weight as we rushed down into darkness. I could barely see where we were going, but he pulled me along, his grip firm and reassuring. I had a million thoughts racing through my head, but I couldn't voice any of them now. I only knew that whatever was hunting us wasn't far behind. Turn on your phone, he whispered urgently. I fumbled in my pocket and hit the button, the screen illuminating the narrow space in front of us. The beam flickered against stacked boxes and a rusty old bike. It felt abandoned, but the air was thick with something and energy, perhaps that didn't sit well with me. What is all this? I asked, scanning the piles. Whose stuff is this? Old junk left behind. The last family that lived here, he trailed off, and the unspoken words felt heavier than the darkness around us. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed above us, and I gasped, my heart jumping into my throat. We have to keep moving, he urged, pulling me further down the staircase. I felt a cold sweat break out across my forehead. That we reached a landing. The room beyond was small, cluttered with old furniture, and a single window barely let in any light. My pulse quickened when I noticed a dusty old trunk in the corner, its lock rusted and broken. What's in there? I asked, drawn to it despite my fear. Whatever it is, I don't think we should find out, he said, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it might hold answers. The growling above us was growing more intense, as if whatever was out there had found another way in. Ignoring his warning, I approached the trunk. I need to know. The latch gave way with a simple tug, and I lifted the heavy lid. Inside was a scattering of items, old photographs, toys, and a faded diary. Don't, he shouted, but it was too late. I reached for the diary, feeling an odd pull toward it, almost as if it was calling to me. Just before I could grab it, the growling morphed into an inhuman scream that sent chills down my spine. That was when I felt it. Something ice-cold slid past my shoulder, like a breath from the grave. I spun around, heart racing. "It's here," I gasped, instinctively stepping back. The room filled with shadows, and I could hear what sounded like scratching at the top of the stairs. "Get down," he shouted. I dropped to the floor, frozen in fear as the darkness started to take shape. A figure emerged at the top of the stairs, silhouetted by the faint light. "Stay away," I yelled, my voice trembling. The figure didn't respond, its eyes glowing unnaturally in the dark. "Go," he urged again, and without thinking, I lunged for the diary. I had to know what secrets it held, even if it meant facing the thing lurking above us. I seized the diary and flipped it open, words blurred into view. The first entry chilled me to the bone. "They are watching. We can't leave. They won't let us." Before I could process the meaning, the figure started to descend the stairs. I knew then that time was slipping away, and the real nightmare was just beginning. I froze, staring at the figure creeping down, its eyes glowing like twin embers against the darkness. There was something wrong about the way it moved, as if it were pulling reality along with it, a twisted sort of grace that sent shivers through me. My fingers trembled on the diary's pages, the words swimming in and out of focus. "What do we do?" I whispered, my voice shaky. I didn't even know what I was asking for. The truth was, I was paralyzed with fear. "Keep it away from you," he shouted, grabbing my arm and yanking me backward, away from the trunk. "We can't let it touch you. We need to find another way out." The growling intensified, mingling with a guttural voice that echoed from the creature's throat. It sounded both human and animal, a twisted combination that made my skin crawl. I felt a part of me wanting to reach out to it, to understand what was driving it, while another part screamed that this was a monster. "Come on," he yelled, pulling me further into the shadows of the room. I stumbled over a table leg, but he steadied me. The diary slipped from my grasp, landing open on the floor. I glanced at it, desperate to know more. "We can't stay here," he pressed. "Focus on moving." With the figure still descending the stairs, we dashed toward a door at the far end of the room. It was slightly ajar, and beyond it, I could see the faint glow of light, a possible escape. But just as we reached the door, a shattering sound reverberated through the room. The creature let out another unholy scream, echoing through the air like a warning shot. "Go," he insisted, practically forcing me to push through the door. I stumbled through the threshold, landing hard on the cold floor of a narrow passage. My heart raced as I scrambled to my feet. "Where are we?" I stammered, glancing back at him. My mind was racing, the adrenaline coursing through my veins like fire. "I don't know. Just keep moving," he urged, peering around the corner of the doorway, his face taut with urgency. The hallway stretched ahead, dimly illuminated by flickering lights overhead. Old pipes snaked along the walls, and the air was thick with dust and mildew. I felt like I was stepping into a tomb. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, halting my steps. It was quiet, too quiet. "Hurry," he urged again, and I could see his eyes darting back toward the direction we had come. It was a mix of fear and determination on his face that I couldn't shake from my mind. "We have to keep moving before it finds us." I turned to follow him, but then I noticed something on the ground, a small wooden toy, colorful and oddly pristine among the decay. It caught me off guard, and I crouched down to pick it up. My fingers wrapped around its smooth edges. "That's just junk," he said, sounding annoyed. "Leave it." But when I looked closer, I could see an inscription. It was a name. "Wait," I said, my voice rising with urgency. I had to know more, but before I could say anything else, a loud crash sounded from behind us. I looked up, fear radiating through me once more. The figure was coming. I bolted after him, the toy still clenched in my hand. Whatever mystery that lay ahead, I knew one truth: we were not alone. I sprinted down the narrow passage, my pulse pounding in my ears. The dim lights flickered and buzzed overhead, casting long shadows that danced behind us. We turned a corner, and I glanced back just long enough to confirm that the creature was gaining ground. Its growls echoed against the walls, haunting and ominous. "Keep going," he shouted again, his voice breaking through my muddled thoughts. I focused ahead, forcing my legs to move faster. Panic clawed at my chest, but I pushed it down. Not now. I needed to think that we passed through another doorway, bursting into a small, cluttered room. Old furniture lay strewn about, dust cloaking everything like a heavy blanket. A single window flickered with the last light of dusk. I could feel the chill seeping in through the old glass. What do we do now? I gasped, looking around. There was no other exit. No place to hide. There, he said, pointing to a heavy wooden cabinet in the corner. We can block the door with that. I rushed over to help him, shoving my shoulder against the cabinet as he pushed from the other side. It scraped painfully against the floor, but we finally managed to wedge it in front of the door. Just as the growls grew louder, we pressed ourselves against the cold wood, hearts racing. I felt dizzy, each breath heavy in my lungs. My mind raced through every terrifying possibility. Maybe it will lose interest, he panted, wiping sweat from his brow. But who or what is that thing? I don't know, I hissed, trying to listen for the creature. The growling was muffled now, but I could still hear it thrashing against the door, testing our barricade. Then, beside me, I realized something weird about the room. In one corner, I spotted a small door, partially hidden behind a stack of old boxes. Over there, I pointed, trying to be heard above the chaos. We can escape through that. He followed my gaze, his eyes widening. You think it leads outside? Only one way to find out. Without waiting for his response, I rushed over. My hands trembled as I tried the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I pressed my body against it, the wood feeling solid beneath me. Help me. Together, we shoved against the door, and with a creak, it opened a fraction. The darkness beyond was thick, swallowing what little light remained. Just as we made a small opening, the cabinet shuddered as the creature slammed into it, knocking it sideways. Now, he shouted that I squeezed through the gap. It was cramped, and I could barely see my surroundings. The air outside felt different, crisp and alive. He followed close behind, and we tumbled out into the unknown. That we lay on the frozen ground, surrounded by trees that loomed like silent guardians in the night. I caught my breath and turned back to look at the door, expecting to see the creature emerging, but it was eerily still inside. What was that thing? He gasped, eyes wide with fear. I don't know, I admitted, feeling the weight of the toy still clutched in my hand. I turned it over, the name glimmering dimly in the fading light. It was familiar, like a fleeting dream I couldn't quite grasp. That S when I saw it, I said, my voice barely a whisper. There was more to this place than I realized. See what? He pressed anxiously. The other door, it looks familiar. But why? A new layer of dread settled in my stomach. If this place held answers, I knew we had to go back. But was that even safe? In the stillness of the night, we were faced with a choice: run deeper into the woods or venture back to where the darkness stirred. There was a heaviness in the air as we lay on the ground, breathing hard, our hearts echoing the ominous growls still resonating from the cabin. It felt like the woods were waiting, holding their breath along with us, expecting something to happen. Lily, he whispered, urgency flashing in his eyes. We can't stay here. We have to find shelter, somewhere safe until morning. I paused, torn between a primal instinct to flee and an irresistible urge to confront whatever lay hidden here. The toy in my hand felt like a link to the past, and I could almost hear the whispers echoing through the trees. I glanced toward the shadows, hesitating over our next move. I nodded, my voice barely a whisper. Okay, but what about the cabin? What about that thing? It's gone for now, he replied with a strained voice as he scanned our surroundings. We can't fight it, not yet. We need to get away and regroup. Gathering my wits, I pushed myself up and surveyed the ink-black woods around us. Every shadow felt thick with unseen dangers. The last remnants of twilight fought hard against the encroaching darkness, casting long, flickering forms that danced like specters. Suddenly, from somewhere deep in the woods, a howl broke through the stillness, raw and haunting. I could feel my heart race as icy adrenaline coursed through my veins. We have to move, I urged, taking a step away from the cabin and into the unknown. The path seemed twisted and treacherous, but I needed something, a moment, an answer, anything to get a grasp on the chaos that now engulfed me. He didn't need to be told twice. We pushed through the underbrush, and for a while, nothing followed us. The howls faded into the distance, but the sensation of being watched never left. I felt like the woods were alive, enfolding us in the weight of their secrets. Do you think it could have something to do with the girls who went missing? I gasped, breathless from the pace we set. He hesitated, his expression tightening. I don't know. But I think if we can find some answers. A rustle in the trees interrupted him, a shift in the air that sent a jolt of terror through me. We froze, caught in a web of uncertainty. Was it another creature? Or perhaps the very spirit that had been calling to me? Without thinking, I clutched the toy tightly, its smooth edges grounding me to this moment. Do you think it's fate? I whispered. That we're supposed to be here? To find the truth about all of this? I don't know if I believe in fate, but something keeps drawing us back, he replied cautiously, glancing over his shoulder. You know that diary, the one you found? It might hold the key to what this thing wants, or what has kept it here. As we continued deeper into the woods, I felt reality close in tightly, secrets unspooled from branches overhead, shadows stretched just out of reach. I couldn't shake the pull to return to the swing set, to search for something more ominous but strangely familiar. Time had slipped away, moments melding into a blur of anxiety and despair. But still, the haunting echo of unanswered questions pressed heavy on my chest. What if we never find out? What if that thing is tied to my dad, or to the things we've lost? My voice trembled with fear and urgency. Then we find a way to break that tie, he replied, glancing back at me. We can't let it dictate our lives. The words sank deep, a lifeline amidst the chaos. I realized then that escape wasn't just about running. It was about understanding. I needed to face the truth, but the true nature of it remained shrouded in fog. Let us go back, I said suddenly, firming my resolve. If we can confront it, maybe we can break free. He hesitated, fear shadowing his features, but I could see the flicker of understanding in his eyes. With a hurried nod, we turned back toward the clearing, the air crackling with tension as we emerged into the clearing. The swing set stood eerily still, bathed in silver moonlight. It felt like a portal to everything at stake. We had entered the realm of the lost, driven by echoes of voices and shadows untold. There awaiting us, in the silence, was the essence of our journey, with all its unanswered questions. Just then, I felt a rush of cold air that swept across my skin from behind. My pulse quickened as I turned sharply, seeing the shape of something just beyond the trees. The darkness quirked with possibilities, leaving a chill where confidence once burned bright, and the voice, that soothing but unsettling whisper, returned with a question I didn't want to answer. Why are you here? I stood frozen in place, grappling with the unknown while the swing creaked softly, borne by the tendrils of the night air. Lily, look out, he shouted, pulling me back as a shadow lunged from the trees. The confrontation had begun, unraveling everything I thought I knew. There, in that moment, ambiguity and confrontation collided as I faced a dark reality still rooted in mystery. I would have to find answers, whether I was ready or not.